Welcome to Wildcat Science with Mrs. Haugo. This is Human Biology, Chapter 2, Part 2. And we're talking about chemistry, matter, and life. And then, if you recall, in Part 1, we figured out what happened with Margaret. We talked about elements and their atomic structure. We talked about ionic bonds and how they donate and accept electrons. We talked about electrolytes and how they're important in your body. We talked about covalent bonds and how they share electrons. We talked about different types of compounds. And we talked about mixtures, are substances that do not chemically react, and some aqueous solutions and suspensions. We talked about how important water is in your body, how it stabilizes body temperature. It's used in all types of chemical reactions. We talked about the pH scale, how 7 is neutral and below 7 is acidic, and some acids in your body. And we talked about bases, that's above 7.5, and some bases. And then we're going to talk about buffers. So buffers are substances that help maintain a constant pH by preventing big changes in pH. And we know that it's important because we know pH is really important for homeostasis so we don't die. Carbonic acid is a really important buffer in the blood. So when you breathe in, the oxygen goes, to all of your cells, goes to the mitochondria and makes ATP, and then one of the waste products is CO2. And then when that mixes with the H2O in your blood, it becomes carbonic acid, H2CO3. And then carbonic acid does this thing where it will break apart, it will dissociate into a bicarbonate ion and then one of its hydrogens, so a hydrogen ion. And then that can further break apart into the carbonate ion where it's missing both of its hydrogens, and then a hydrogen here and a hydrogen here. So as we know, acids donate hydrogens, and bases either have OHs or they tend to accept hydrogens. So if things are too acidic, it could always go back this way, and the buffer can pick up hydrogens to go this way. Or if things are too basic, it could always donate hydrogens and make it more acidic, make it more towards neutral. So this works out really well at maintaining a constant pH by either gobbling up or donating hydrogen ions. So looking at our checkpoints to make sure you can answer these. What number is neutral on the pH scale, and what kind of compound measures lower than this number? And what is the name of the compound that measures higher than that neutral number? And what is a buffer? So let's take a look at isotopes and radioactivity. So isotopes, perhaps you remember this word from 9th grade science. They are elements, so the same element, but they have different numbers of neutrons. So same number of protons, same element, but they have different types of neutrons, so they have different masses, they have different weights. So carbon-12, which has 6 protons, carbon-12 has 6 protons, and carbon-14 also has 6 protons, because the number of protons, if you remember from 9th grade science, determines which element it is. And so then 6 plus what equals 12? Well, 6. So carbon-12 has 6 neutrons, and then 6 plus what equals 14? 8. So carbon-14 has 8 neutrons. So what's the difference? Well, this is a very stable isotope, and this is a radioactive isotope. And that can be very useful because we use carbon-14 for carbon dating. Let's say we found some bones in a glacier and we wanted to know, are they from 100 years ago or are they from 10,000 years ago? And we'd use carbon-14 dating to do that. So very few isotopes are radioactive. Most of the isotopes are just general non-radioactive elements. Some examples of some radioactive elements. Cobalt-60 is used for radiation therapy for a person who has cancer. Radioactive iodine, like iodine-123, iodine-124, iodine-125, and iodine-131. So it has several radioactive isotopes. is used as a tracer for the thyroid if doctors are looking at thyroid cancer or just your thyroid function. So other uses of radioactivity and isotopes are X-rays, CT scans, and more. Looking at our Chapter 2 checkpoints on page 27, make sure you can answer this one. What word is to describe isotopes that give off radiation? Lastly, in Chapter 2, we want to talk about our biological molecules, our 4 organic compounds. And organic compounds are large, complex molecules that contain carbon. And these are essential for life. And there are 4 of them we're going to talk about: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So let's start with the carbohydrates. So carbohydrates, just like in foods class, those are the things that you eat that make up your body, so they are basically the same thing: sugars and starches. And why are carbohydrates important? They are sources of energy. So we usually break them up into simple sugars and then more complex starches. So what are the simple sugars? Well, you could have one sugar molecule, and that's a monosaccharide, one sugar. And the most common one is glucose. And we know that your body, when you eat, breaks things down into glucose, and then your mitochondria uses the glucose during cellular respiration to make ATP, which fuels everything in your body. So it's good to have that. Now sucrose is table sugar, so disaccharides, di is 2, so you have 2 glucoses together make that yummy table sugar, sucrose. So let's put a whole bunch of them together and you get polysaccharides, which are long chains of simple sugars. So if you get glucose, 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 and so on for a long time, you'll get starch that is found in plants, and then glycogen, which is found in animals. And there's a nice picture of, on page 28, glucose, sucrose, and then glycogen, which is a storage form in our body where your body stores a whole bunch of sugar molecules together in a chain. So the next biological molecule we want to talk about are lipids, and a common name for lipids are fats. And one thing about fats is that they are not soluble in water. So kind of 3 types of fats we're going to talk about, 3 types of lipids we're going to talk about. Triglycerides. Triglycerides are important because they they insulate your body, they protect your organs, they are a long-term energy storage in your body. So you do need fat in your body. You don't need more than your body needs, because then you can get in trouble with some metabolic diseases, but you do need fat in your diet and in your body. Another type of fat or lipid is phospholipids, and hopefully this sounds familiar from biology because those make up the cell membrane. So you need lipids to make phospholipids, you need fats in your diet to make phospholipids, so you can make new cells because each cell needs a cell membrane. Steroids, not a bad thing unless you're taking them illegally. Your body has lots of steroids in it naturally. Cholesterol, which helps stabilize your cell membrane. And then a lot of hormones like estrogen and testosterone are cholesterol or steroid-based hormones. There's a nice picture on page 29 of a triglyceride and a cholesterol molecule to help you visualize those. So looking at our third biological molecule or organic compound, protein. So these are super important. What is a protein? It is a chain of amino acids, sometimes referred to as a polypeptide, that gets folded up into really complex shapes. So proteins make up you. They are the thing that makes up your bones. They are the thing that makes up your muscles. They are the thing that makes up lots of other tissues, which we'll learn more about in chapter 4. Proteins help make you physically distinct. They are the color pigments in your hair, your skin, your eyes that make you look like you and different from everybody else. And they are important in everything. Basically, every bodily function wouldn't happen unless there was a protein making it happen. So definitely important in your diet and in your body. So there is a nice picture on page 30 of what an amino acid is, and then how you can put amino acids together to make a protein or take them apart to when your body breaks it down in digestion to use those amino acids, and then kind of the complex shapes they get folded into. So a very important type of protein is an enzyme, and hopefully you remember this from biology. Enzymes speed up reactions, biological reactions, and that's a catalyst if it speeds up a reaction. And their shape is so important. We've talked about structure and function, structure and function, structure and function. So it's like a lock and a key. So one enzyme is like the key for one molecule, which is the lock, and then it'll break it apart or put it together, whatever its job is to do. So each enzyme has one specific job, and it's shaped for that job. So you have thousands of different enzymes in your body. There's a nice picture of an enzyme on page 30, figure 211, where the enzyme is shaped for a substance, and it puts those together, gets them close together, and then makes a bond and makes a new thing, where it's putting two things together to make a new thing. It's chemically combining things. So, when the structure and function are the name of the game, we're really concerned about shape, and there are some times when the shape can become undone and then your enzyme can't do its job, and that's really bad. That's called denaturation, and that's when the enzyme starts to unfold because your temperature is too high or too low, or your pH is too high or too low, because the temperature and the shape affect how that protein folds. So that is a bad situation because the enzymes cannot do their job if they're not the right shape. Enzymes can't do your job, your body can't keep homeostasis, and then body damage or even death will occur. So this is definitely something we want to avoid. We want to keep homeostasis, we want to keep temperatures and pHs constant in our body. Your body is doing an excellent job of maintaining that as we speak right now. Okay, fourth type are nucleic acids or nucleotides. So the nucleotide is the little chunk. Nucleic acids is when you put a whole bunch of them together. A nucleotide, that little chunk, has three parts to it: a nitrogen-containing base, a sugar, and a phosphate group. So ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is one type of a nucleotide. And then there are DNA nucleotides and RNA nucleotides, and when you put a bunch of DNA nucleotides together, you get DNA, the nucleic acid DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid. When you put a bunch of RNA nucleotides together, you get ribonucleic acid. All right, so looking at our checkpoints, make sure you can answer these. What element is the basis of organic chemistry? 212. What are the three main categories of organic compounds? And I would say 4. 213, what is an enzyme? And 214, what is a nucleotide? And what compounds are made of nucleotides? We're going to revisit Margaret and see how she's doing in class. And your Chapter 2 notes are done. You get a star. Good job. Bye.